play? Can I play? Well, you can.
Play yesterday.
We were just waiting for Rasmandan Prabhu. Yeah, you can. Acharya Stotra Satta Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki ISKCON Deviti Founder Acharyas Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Sri Vrindavan Mathura Dhama Ki Sri Dwarka Dhama Ki Sri Jagannath Puri Dhama Ki Sri Navadvip Mayapur Dhama Ki Sri Mayapur Chandraday Mandir Ki Ganga Mai Jumanamai Ki Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Harinama Sankirtana Ki Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai Shri Shri Gauranitai Ki Jai Shri Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki Jai Shri Krishna Balaram Ki Jai Shri Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Sri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Pimanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru, to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Special welcome to Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, Prabhu. Alamashwa Prabhu. Tisha. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Jita Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parichana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Veshakanvitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nasta Prayesha Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Tamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahmasamitam Uttamashloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Chaitanyam Swasyayanam Mahad Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Shri Surabhyai Namaha Om Shri Surabhyai Namaha Om Shri Surabhyai Namaha Mukham karoti vachalam pangum mangayate girim Yat kripat maham bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Yat kripat maham bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. So today we are continuing our reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 1, and that is chapter 4, entitled The Appearance of Sri Narada, and today we're doing number 8, yes. Sa go-dohana-mātraṁ hi gṛheṣu gṛha-medhinām avekṣate mahā-bhāgas tīrthī-kurvaṁs tad āśramam sa go-dohana-mātraṁ hi gṛheṣu gṛha-medhinām avekṣate mahā-bhāgas tīrthī-kurvaṁs tad āśramam sa go-dohana-mātraṁ hi gṛheṣu gṛha-medhinām avekṣate mahā-bhāgas tīrthī-kurvaṁs tad āśramam sa go-dohana-mātraṁ hi gṛheṣu gṛha-medhinām avekṣate mahā-bhāgas tīrthī-kurvaṁs tad āśramam
sa go-dohana-mātraṁ hi gṛheṣu gṛha-medhinām avekṣate mahā-bhāgas tīrthī-kurvaṁs tad āśramam
sa go-dohana-mātraṁ hi
gṛheṣu
gṛha-medhinām
gṛheṣu gṛha-medhinām
avekṣate mahā-bhāgas
avekṣate mahā-bhāgas
tīrthī-kurvaṁs āśramam
tīrthī-kurvaṁs āśramam
go-dohana-mātraṁ
gṛheṣu
gṛha-medhinām
gṛha-medhinām
avekṣate mahā-bhāgas
avekṣate mahā-bhāgas
tīrthī-kurvaṁs āśramam
tīrthī-kurvaṁs āśramam
go-dohana-mātraṁ
go-dohana-mātraṁ
gṛheṣu gṛha-medhinām
gṛha-medhinām
avekṣate mahā-bhāgas
avekṣate mahā-bhāgas
tīrthī-kurvaṁs āśramam
tīrthī-kurvaṁs āśramam go-dohana-mātraṁ gṛheṣu gṛha-medhinām avekṣate mahā-bhāgas tīrthī-kurvaṁs āśramam
Saha He Śukadeva Gosvāmī
Śukadeva Gosvāmī
go-dohana-mātraṁ
go-dohana-mātraṁ
only for the time
of
milking the cow.
milking cow.
He
He
certainly gṛheṣu in the house gṛha-medhinām of the householders avekṣate waits mahā-bhāgaḥ the most fortunate tīrthī pilgrimage kurvan transforming tat āśramam the residence. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. He, Śukadeva Gosvāmī, is accustomed to staying at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked. And he does this just to sanctify the residence. Kindly repeat after me. He, Śukadeva Gosvāmī, is accustomed to staying at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked. And he does this just to sanctify the residence. Purport. Śukadeva Gosvāmī met Emperor Parikshit and explained the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. He was not accustomed to staying at any householder's residence for more than half an hour at the time of milking the cow. And he would just take alms from the fortunate householder. That was to sanctify the residence by his auspicious presence. Therefore, Śukadeva Gosvāmī is an ideal preacher established in the transcendental position. From his activities, those who are in the renounced order of life and dedicated to the mission of preaching the message of Godhead should learn that they have no business with householders, save and except to enlighten them in transcendental knowledge. Such asking for alms from the householder should be for the purpose of sanctifying his home. One who is in the renounced order of life should not be allured by the glamour of the householder's worldly possessions and thus become subservient to worldly men. For one who is in the renounced order of life, this is much more dangerous than drinking poison and committing suicide. So we have householders and those in the renounced order of life sitting in the class today. We'll just read the text again. He, Śukadeva Gosvāmī, is accustomed to staying at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked, and he does this just to sanctify the residence. So it is very appropriate that today, being Purnima Day, which I was mentioning earlier, on Purnima we have the habit, we have been encouraging devotees in different places, especially those who have Goshala, to perform Go Puja on Purnima Day. Actually, the tradition is that householders would perform Go Puja on a daily basis. They would, every householder in the Vedic culture, practically speaking, would have cow, at least one cow. Generally, many cows. And it was a duty and responsibility of the Mataji, to wash the cows, to clean the cows, actually every morning, every day. So we are being reminded here of very important points made both in the text as well as the purport. How traditionally those in the renounced order of life, as personalities like Śukadeva Gosvāmī, here there is mention 3 times of householders in the purport, and in the text there is mention of gṛha-medhinām. There is, Prabhupada makes a difference actually in other purports, the difference between gṛhasta and gṛha-medhi. Gṛhasta and gṛha-medhi. Medhi is explained or understood as in the villages when they will, after harvesting the paddy, they will be, there's a process to extract the rice, or the paddy actually, from the stalk. And they use a post, maybe you're familiar, they use a post around which the bullocks would walk on the paddy. Yeah, so that post is called medhi. That's important to know for Western people, especially people in India, they already know these things. But Srila Prabhupada is explaining and reminding us in that context that the gṛha-medhi are those who are like that post. They are fixed actually to the most difficult thing to become detached from in family life, and that is sex life. And they are simply circulating, going around and around sense gratification, the ultimate expression being sex life. That is actually the life of gṛha-medhi, as opposed to gṛhastha. Gṛhastha life is what those who have taken up Krishna consciousness are following. That is a life where the center is very different. The center is Krishna. The center is Krishna, and we, in our daily lives, we perform activities centered around Krishna. So that can be compared actually to what is mentioned in the Bhagavatam about kama. Kama, lust, being the perverted reflection of the original thing, or as scholars would say, of the original stuff, which is prema. Prema. If one is not cultivating prema, he will be cultivating kama. We have to cultivate something. We have to, by nature, we have to be active. So this is a very nice example, which actually was followed, which was very important part of the Vedic culture of Sanatana Dharma, which is actually meant to be everyone's culture, whereby sadhus would be traveling, especially those in the renounced order of life, sannyasis. Their business primarily is to travel and to show a mercy to householders by stopping. One would go from village to village, and generally actually householders would invite sadhus in their home, and in this case we see how Śukadeva Gosvāmī would go at a very important time, critical time, the time of milking the cows, because basically sadhus like Śukadeva Gosvāmī, and we still find such type of renunciates even today in year 2017. Not too many, but still there are some. I've met a few myself. Sadhus who simply live off milk. They only drink milk. And because milk, as Srila Prabhupada explains, is the miracle food that can sustain those who are somewhat detached. One has to be somewhat detached, and actually cultivating spiritual life to be satisfied and to have what is necessary to sustain this body. So sadhus would visit householders, and we see how in Vrindavan this practice is continued, especially in Vrindavan. Vrindavan being the replica, serving as the replica of the spiritual world. It is referred to as Bhoma Vrindavan, the extension of Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual world. So there are, to this day also, sadhus who perform what is called madhukari. They go in the early morning from house to house, and they collect whatever may be offered actually by the householders. And in the same way that here it's mentioned that this is mahā-bhāgaḥ, most fortunate. Those who are having the opportunity to get the darshan of such sadhus, they are fortunate. They are most fortunate, because when a sadhu actually goes and begs from householder, it is actually one who thinks in a material way will think that, oh, he's depending on me, he's coming to see me for his well-being or whatever. But actually one who has a little bit of spiritual understanding knows that actually the real benefit is meant for the householder. Because generally speaking, and I think householders can vouch for this as well, in householder life we are busy with so many preoccupations and distractions, many of which may not always be the most ideal to remember Krishna, especially in modern day society, where majority of people unfortunately are caught up in what can more easily be understood by us as devotees as non-traditional occupations. And in many ways this is actually very, very detrimental, to the point of actually killing the natural tendency and impetus. This is a very interesting point actually, because non-traditional occupation naturally means that there are traditional occupations. It implies that there is something on the positive side. Non-traditional is totally opposite actually, and not at all ideal. And unfortunately, because of the whole mentality and the wrong direction in which society is being directed, therefore majority of people in many ways are forced actually to be in that kind of situation. When we read and become familiar with the teachings of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam especially, then we come to understand that there is a more natural way of living, a more natural way of working as well, more natural, traditional occupations. And Srila Prabhupada very much wanted that devotees within our society and people in general, in what we call general society, also be gradually brought back to this more natural way of living, where one takes up these traditional occupations. And one of the immediate, we could say, results when this happens is that, number one, one will experience much less anxiety, you see. As a matter of fact, Chanika Pandit explains how there are two ways or three ways in which one can be happy. One of the ways is that he should live in a localized manner, locally, without having... Living locally means actually one's occupation is close by, walking distance, or bicycle distance, not much more, not motorbike distance, bicycle distance or walking distance. So that is why that in the traditional culture, in the traditional Vedic culture, where agriculture is actually the basis of life, basis of living, basis of making one's living. Therefore, when one has land, one's occupation is on his land, is close by, isn't it? And in this way, actually, Chanaka explains how one can be happy by being close to one's home, by being in interaction with family members, and without having to travel a long distance, which is always full of, we don't know actually, unexpected. You know, when we travel, especially in present-day society, the modes of transportation are excessively dangerous. So in this way, living more localized way is something important that brings benefit on many different levels. And what was the other way mentioned by Chanaka? I think you know.
Not have debts.
Huh?
Not have debts.
Yes, we should not be incurring debts.
EMIs.
Huh?
No EMIs.
Yes,
Liquidated
no
things.
credit cards. Nowadays, different banks and other agencies, they are in so many ways trying to give you credit cards because they know that as soon as you have that, you're going to use it, you're going to spend, and they will make money, and you will be the loser in so many different ways. So, in this way, actually, Vedic culture has built-in systems that ultimately actually are very much based on, simplicity. In some of the purports that we read in the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Srila Narada Muni is especially explaining about the whole scientific arrangement of varna and āśramas. So Srila Prabhupada explains in some of those purports, especially stresses the aspect of simplicity. Modern day society has made things the complete opposite. Very complex. It's very, very difficult. I mean, life has become so complex that people have lost their ability to understand simplicity, practically speaking. So Vedic culture is based on, simple living, which favors high thinking, which favors one to cultivate actually spiritual life. Therefore, those in the renounced order of life, and there are others, actually ultimately, those in the renounced order of life we call swamis, yogis, are generally in the renounced order of life. Those who actually are serious in applying or practicing the science of yoga, the science of bhakti yoga, of course, especially. But in the Bhagavad Gita, actually, Krishna explains how ultimately all of us are meant to cultivate yoga, because yoga means detachment, isn't it? Detachment from this material world. We cannot nicely, properly advance in yoga and spiritual life unless we become detached from this material world. So there are two things important for spiritual life, and that is cultivation of knowledge. And as we cultivate knowledge, as we realize more and more the nature of transcendence, then our attraction to material things, material objects, whatever, material, various material attractions will diminish. And Bhagavatam very nicely explains how simply by taking up the process of bhakti, devotional service, Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Sayad Ahaitukam. Simply by the process of bhakti, in a causeless way, automatically both vairagya, detachment, and jnanam, knowledge, will actually be there, will come automatically. So in this way, the process of devotional service is therefore the topmost process, topmost yoga system, as explained by the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita. And this is what the Srimad Bhagavatam is all about, to show us through personalities, especially like Śukadeva Gosvāmī, who has given us, by first reciting to Parikshit Maharaj this whole entire science of transcendental knowledge, covering, as we were explaining the other day, all the different levels actually of the science of dharma, isn't it? Which has to do with cultivation of the spirit self through activities of devotional service, and also very important in our present day modern society, again, something that Srila Prabhupada stressed, learning how to live, even materially speaking, in a way that will be more simple and more conducive for our practice of Krishna consciousness, and therefore more conducive for our advancement in devotional service. So we have possibly a few minutes if there are any comments or questions. Means everything is very clear, and no one objects to any of the points made in the verse of purport.
Maharaj mentioned that because we are not following any, we are having more non-traditional occupations. Is it the reason why that we are not able to develop vairagya? Could be one of the reasons that.
So your question is it possibly one of the reasons that we are not able to develop vairagya because we're caught up in non-traditional occupations? And the answer is yes. Yes. It makes it, it's not impossible, but it makes it more difficult. It is not as conducive because we are caught up in an atmosphere which is, generally speaking, not devotional, and we are having to associate as well with individuals or people who are not helping us to become Krishna conscious, rather the opposite. They're generally inciting us hey, why are you not drinking tea, or why you're not whatever, why don't you watch television? I mean, a lot of nice educational programs. People will give all kinds of excuses. Of course, it's not to deny that there are possibly some good things, but generally speaking, people totally misuse all of the, like internet can be very helpful, but, something like 80 or 90% of the internet is full of pornography and all kinds of, deadly enticements, which are, to say the least, not at all conducive for spiritual life, isn't it? So, the various tools that are there in modern society may not be in themselves bad, but generally speaking, people make bad use of them, number one. And secondly, to have created or to maintain all of these different, I'm talking about tools, means, products of mechanization and industrialization, because we are living, as Prabhupada would say, in the age of machines, you see. So industrialization actually, now I'm going to ask a question to whoever. I'm looking for a verse. Someone mentioned to me that actually there is a reference in the Mahā-bhāgata. And of course, Mahā-bhāgata has got a lot of verses. So it might take some time, unless somebody knows it. The question or the statement was the following, that it is clearly mentioned somewhere in the Mahā-bhāgata that the age of Kali in which we're living will be especially characterized by people's attraction and obsession for machines. And we know how those who are like of asuric mentality, they just love to because that's that's their level of thinking, gross matter and whatnot. They're on that. Whereas those who are transcendentalists, their main preoccupation is the opposite. I mean, isn't it? They're on the spiritual level, especially. Not that they neglect the material level, but they simply utilize what is, as Prabhupada would explain, what is the minimum we need, to keep the body and soul together. I mean, to meet our basic necessities of life. And that's why modern people cannot understand very often those who favor, Vedic culture, because, hey, these people, they're not passionate about life. Not passionate about life like we are. They don't want to, because, common people, modern people who are on the bodily platform, they're very passionate about making money, about traveling, about discovering so many things, But they're actually, as Prabhupada would say, they're missing the point. Whereas in the Vedic culture, we actually have a very great respect, and we utilize in a natural way, the various resources that Krishna has provided. But when we look at the modern setup, we basically, what we see, modern man has basically exploited to a tremendous, dangerous level the resources of material nature, basically for his own benefit or profit. Whereas in the Vedic culture, because the mentality is completely different, we utilize the minimum. We disturb to the minimum material nature. For example, instead of having a bore well, we will make an open well, and we will take or extract water according to our needs. And yeah.
And slowly also.
And slowly, yeah, without hard, endeavor. And this system, actually, what it does, is a whole other point, of course. But in the Vedic culture, for example, one family has sufficient foodstuff in one crop. Krishna has arranged that the rainy season comes once a year. And when the rainy season comes, that's when we grow our rice, especially, which is the main staple food in India and other places possibly, except for Canada or America. But nowadays, we have actually, because of greediness, actually, if we are not cultivating spiritual life, if we're on the bodily platform, material platform, we will be greedy, because it just comes in a natural way, kama, krodha, lobha. It's a straight line, and because we can never be satisfied materially, no matter what. So Vedic culture in this way is being based on this principle, very important principle of simplicity, allows us to live in harmony with nature, in harmony with one another, in harmony with Krishna. And in this way, there's a peaceful atmosphere and nature by, the earth is happy to provide and to give in abundance, as we read, from the pages of the Bhagavatam. And again, the total opposite is there, today. Because we've introduced machine, tractors and whatnot, and are no longer using bullocks for plowing, so the Mother Earth, Mother Bhumi, is reacting by having more and more land becoming arid. So this is like one of the major global problems. We have many global problems because we have taken to globalization, so now we have global problems. And one of them is called desertification. Desertification means land is becoming more and more desert-like. Desertification. And that's a very, very major problem. And this would never happen. This had never happened when people were following the Vedic way of life by utilizing what we need in nature, by being satisfied with one crop, by understanding that actually land and food were not commodities, to be tampered with as we are doing in modern day society. And therefore Prabhupada was always reminding us to therefore grow our own food, keep our own cows, and today being Purnima, and today cows being part of the text as well, this should be a reminder to us that if Krishna is merciful, Krishna is always merciful, but he becomes more merciful based on how we endeavor to actually, engage in a loving devotional service with him. So I'll just read the text again to wind up, because a few devotees have just come in at the tail end of the class. We're happy that you have, but you missed the verse, so we'll just repeat it in case maybe you were reading it on the way, I don't know. go-dohana-mātraṁ hi gṛheṣu gṛha-medhinām avekṣate mahā-bhāgas tīrthī-kurvaṁs tad āśramam. And the translation, he, Śukadeva Gosvāmī, is accustomed to staying at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked. And he does this just to sanctify the residence. Nice verse and nice purport.
One question.
Oh, one question coming from the ether. In the current world scenario, now this sounds like a very serious question. In the current world scenario, how can the gṛha-medhīs get the benefit of getting the association of pure devotees or sannyasis? Very good question. Gṛha-medhīs, actually both gṛha-medhīs and grihastas need the good association of pure devotees, and sannyasis also need the association of pure devotees. Definitely there are more challenges in modern day society because of the whole setup. One can get the association. Association is not only by direct or personal contact, isn't it? I think we were touching on this point a few days back, how what is especially important and potent is to receive the instructions that are coming from saintly persons. We may not always be fortunate to have the physical presence of sadhus, of mendicants, let's say coming to our home, but we can hear from them through the pages of the Bhagavatam, of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And nowadays, because of the modern setup, we can hear, isn't it? We can hear on a daily basis lectures. We can see also videos, just like Prabhupada's videos and lectures are widely available. Now, at the same time, one who is generally gṛha-medhīs, they may be less, well, it depends. If they're fortunate gṛha-medhīs, they will want to have sadhus. Actually, when Yudhisthira Maharaj, who as we know was not a gṛha-medhī, he's a pure devotee, but he presented himself as a gṛha-medhī to Narada Muni. I mean, he took a very humble position and desired to hear from Narada Muni about the duties and responsibilities of householders, considering himself most fallen. Of course, he was not. So regardless of our position, we should endeavor to either visit places where such persons travel to or come, or have programs, or sometimes, just like the residents or the devotees who were in Jagannath Puri during Lord Chaitanya's residence in Jagannath Puri, there was not one single day that Lord Chaitanya did not have a standing invitation to take prasadam in one householder's home, isn't it? And that's nicely explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, how devotees were competing actually to have Lord Chaitanya come to their home. So devotees should be aware when different sannyasis possibly are visiting and invite them to their home. And of course that may not always be possible, but they should go to where sannyasis or maybe or any preacher. We have within our ISKCON society not only sannyasis who are traveling preaching and from whom one can get benefit. And of course we need more for grihastas, or rather here the question was how can gṛha-medhī benefit, isn't it, from the association of saintly persons, then it's important for more of our devotees, whether they are in a renounced order of life, officially, in terms of saffron color. Anyone who has seriously taken up to Krishna consciousness, who knows the science, as nicely explained by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Kipa Vipra, Kipa Nyasi, Shudra Kene Noi, Jai Krishna Tattvaveta Se Guru Hoy, anyone who knows the science of Krishna consciousness. Therefore we need more of our devotees who know the science of Krishna consciousness, who are practicing nicely, to actually go out and preach the message. And we've been kind of emphasizing that within our ministry here in India, that there's a very urgent need, not only for our own ministry, but actually for all of our devotees in all of our temples here in India, all of our temples all over the world actually, for devotees to actually go out, especially in a place like India where we have still the majority of people are living in the villages, isn't it? Now it's gone below 70%, but it's still the majority of people are in the villages. So outreach, village outreach preaching is very, very crucial in many different ways. And one of them actually is because it's especially there in the villages that one can have darshan of cows also and may be fortunate to get some pure deshi cow's milk, which is very rare to get in the cities nowadays. So these are some ways in which gṛha-medhīs or householders can get the benefit of devotees by making an effort themselves, and also by those who are devotees to themselves also make an effort to reach out to different families. That is the standing order actually by Lord Chaitanya. Every town and village to introduce the holy name of the Lord, the Sankirtan movement. Okay. Jai Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.